so the question is, this focus on productivity, does it lead to extra stress and burnout and everything, this increased pace? And the answer ultimately is yes sometimes, but often it's because it's not being done right. So some people say we should all have 1 week iterations or 2 week iterations. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, that means every 2 weeks I got to have code that's built, designed, built, tested. Like, how are we going to get that done? The poor testers, because the coders are always delivering it late to them. They've got like a day to test it, and they're scrambling, and there's so much stress in that. I would not call that good Agile. I'd call that fragile, not Agile, right? It's too stressful. It's too short. There's too much expectation. We would try to lengthen the iterations and give people a bit more time to work at a more relaxed pace. In fact, extreme programming, think about the name extreme. You think that would be the most intense of them all? Extreme programming has 12 principles. 12 principles. One of them is essentially work at a sustainable pace. Extreme doesn't mean burn yourself out. Work at a steady, reliable pace. It's predictable. You can then forecast. You can start to come up with plans because it's very reliable. Right? So there's a lot in that. But that's the difference between the disciplined structured approaches to Agile and the loosey-goosey approaches to Agile. If you follow these disciplined structured approaches, it's all about the metrics and the forecasting and the management of it. Right? So it's about being predictable and forecasting, and that lowers risk and improves communications. So we want that structured approach. These loosey-goosey people say, there's no rules, we're Agile. They create all kinds of chaos, and that's often when teams are burning themselves out. The other issue is iterations that are too short. Think about it this way. Say starting up and shutting down an iteration takes, say, half a day to start up an iteration. You've got to plan what you're doing, build the work breakdown structure, estimate all the tasks and hours to build something in Agile we call an iteration or sprint backlog. You come up with a plan for the iteration. Say it takes half a day. And say it takes half a day to close out an iteration. We have to demonstrate our work in progress to the stakeholders, prepare for that demo, do a lessons learned, capture all the feedback from them, act on it. Right? Say that takes half a day. Well, if we're doing 1 week iterations, 5 working days, 2 half days or 1 full day is consumed by starting up and shutting down the iteration. That's a 20% productivity hit. Right? So just think, we're already losing 20% of the productivity. Before we even start, we're going to have to work more intense. Never mind that it's a short time, we're also losing a lot of our productive hours. But if I just stretch that out to a 1 month iteration, 1 month is 20 working days. I'm still losing half a day to start up, half a day to shut down. That's only 5% overhead, 5% productivity hit. Now I can work at a more steady pace and not feel that frantic, need to rush because we've lost so much of our productive time to the process itself. So sometimes longer iterations fixes some of that problem. Yes?
So following that logic, ideal is something about 1 year long iteration, right?
A 1 year long? Well, one of the factors is efficiency, but you also have to consider how frequently do we need feedback. Does the business want us to go off for a year without feedback? No, we could be going way off in the wrong direction, and then there's huge expensive change requests to get us back on track, right? Costly rework. So Agile's trying to balance the need for feedback with the need for efficiency, and it's a trade-off. But really short iterations, great for getting value out the door quickly, can cause chaos on the team and burnout, and often we miss the deadline because there's just not enough time to debug it and fix the issues because there's not enough days. So really, really short iterations, often only for really advanced expert teams who really know what they're doing. We try to have a little bit of a longer iteration for junior teams, and as they get more efficient, as they learn how to do Agile better, we tighten up the iterations. There are a number of factors that help choose the iteration length, and that isn't the topic of this presentation, but there are a number of factors that affect your iteration length. One is the nature of what you're building. How small can you break the pieces down? If I'm building a website, maybe my smallest piece is, an hour or two's worth of work. I can break it down to really small granular pieces. My next project might be creating a new organization, redesigning our entire organization. 2 organizations are merging. We got to redesign the entire organization. Who reports to who? How many managers do we need? What our new processes and policies are going to be because we got to merge from each of the 2 organizations. And the smallest thing we can do is 6 weeks worth of work because there's so many stakeholders and so much data needed and so many approvals and sign-offs. Sometimes the nature of the work that you're doing drives the size of the iterations. I'll give you another example. NASA is using an iterative incremental approach, an Agile type approach, to build the next generation space vehicle to replace the space shuttle. But we can't do 2-week iterations. You can't design a rocket booster in 2 weeks. So they're using 6-month iterations because it just takes that long to get any meaningful piece of work done. So sometimes the iteration length is driven by the nature of the work that you're doing. Some things just can't be broken down into 1-week chunks or 2-week chunks. So you just need bigger pieces of work, bigger chunks of time. So that's one of the factors. The expertise of the team. More junior people should have longer iterations than more senior people who can tighten things up and be more efficient. Another element is the need for feedback. Earlier in the project, there's high levels of change. You need more feedback than later in the project when the change is settled down and you're just finishing up the lower priority work. You might have longer iterations later in the project. There's other factors to consider. The amount of automation. If I have 14 1-week iterations, I can build a week's worth of work and test a week's worth of work within that week, maybe. And I can do that each week for the 14 weeks. But what about regression testing? What about retesting the old stuff to make sure the new stuff didn't break? That means on iteration 14, the testers have to test the new stuff and retest 14 weeks worth of work all within a few days? I don't think so. That's not going to happen. So the greater number of short iterations, the more you want to look at automation tools to make it more effective and efficient. So there's a lot of factors to consider that affect your iteration length.